California, the Golden State, land of dreams, sunshine, and endless beaches. But beneath the palm trees and Hollywood glamour, California has a dark secret. For decades, the state has been a hunting ground for some of America's most disturbing serial killers. Everyone knows the names: Zodiac, Charles Manson, Richard Ramirez, the ones that made headlines worldwide. But what about the others? The killers who terrorized communities, destroyed families, and left body counts that rival the famous ones. Killers whose names you've probably never heard. These aren't myths. These are verified cases. Real victims, real monsters. This is California's hidden body count. Think about that. Before we explore these disturbing cases, if you want to learn about true crime history most people don't know, subscribe and hit the bell. We cover verified cases with respect for victims. Drop a comment. Which California serial killer case shocked you most? Let's begin. WilliamBonin, the Freeway Killer. Between May 1979 and June 1980, Bonin terrorized Southern California in one of the state's most brutal killing sprees. 14 murders confirmed, 21 confessed, possibly more. And unlike most serial killers, Bonin didn't work alone. He recruited accomplices, young men barely out of their teens who helped him rape, torture, and murder teenage boys. Bonin was born January 8, 1947 in Connecticut. His childhood was a nightmare. At age 6, he was sent to a Catholic orphanage. At 8, he was placed in a juvenile detention center where he was sexually assaulted by older boys. When he was released at age 9, the damage was done. By his teenage years, Bonin was molesting his own younger brother. In 1961, his family moved to Downey, California. Bonin joined the Air Force and later served in Vietnam as an aerial gunner. He earned medals for bravery. He seemed normal to those who served with him. But when he returned home, the mask began to slip. In 1969, Bonin was arrested for kidnapping and sexually assaulting 5 boys in South Bay communities. He was sent to Atascadero State Hospital for treatment. In May 1974, he was paroled. Just 1 year later, in September 1975, Bonin kidnapped 14-year-old David McVicker at gunpoint while the boy was hitchhiking home. He drove McVicker to a remote location, handcuffed him, and assaulted him. But for reasons unknown, Bonin let David go. David survived. He would later testify against Bonin. In 1978, after another stint in prison, Bonin was released again. The system had given him chance after chance, and in May 1979, he began killing. Bonin's method was simple and terrifying. He drove a van through Southern California, cruising freeways and city streets looking for victims. Teenage boys, hitchhikers, runaways, boys heading to the movies or to Disneyland, boys who made the fatal mistake of accepting a ride. Bonin would lure them into his van, often with an accomplice already inside. Once the door closed, the horror began. Bonin's first confirmed victim was 17-year-old Marcus Grabs, a German exchange student backpacking through the United States. On August 5, 1979, Marcus was hitchhiking on Pacific Coast Highway in Newport Beach. Bonin and his accomplice Vernon Butts picked him up. They drove Marcus to Malibu Canyon. There, they beat him, strangled him with an orange cord, and stabbed him 77 times. His naked body was found the next day beside the road. Over the next year, the bodies kept appearing. Always young males, always found near freeways, always showing signs of brutal torture. On August 27, 1979, 15-year-old Donald Hayden was picked up near a community center in Los Angeles. His body was found hours later near the Ventura Freeway off-ramp. He had been strangled, stabbed, and there were attempts to mutilate his genitals. On September 9th, 17-year-old David Murillo was bicycling to the movies when Bonin and Butts abducted him. His body was found 3 days later. His head had been bashed in with a tire iron. In February 1980, Bonin picked up a new accomplice, Gregory Miley, a teenager. Together they picked up 15-year-old Charles Miranda in West Hollywood. They drove him to a remote location, assaulted him, strangled him with a ligature, and dumped his body. Later that same month, 12-year-old James McCabe was heading to Disneyland. Bonin and Miley offered him a ride. In the van, they assaulted James while driving. Then they beat him, strangled him with his own shirt, and crushed his neck with a jack handle. They took money from his wallet and left his body next to a dumpster in Walnut. James was 12 years old. He just wanted to go to Disneyland. The killings continued through the spring of 1980. March 14th, 19-year-old Ronald Gatlin. March 20th, 14-year-old Harry Todd Turner. May 18th, 17-year-old Lawrence Sharp, found in a trash bin behind a gas station. Bonin worked with 4 different accomplices during his killing spree: Vernon Butts, Gregory Miley, William Pugh, James Monroe, young men between 17 and 21 years old who helped torture and kill at least a dozen victims. Then Bonin's luck ran out. William Pugh, one of his accomplices, was arrested on auto theft charges. During questioning, Pugh told detectives he thought Bonin might be the Freeway Killer. David McVicker, who Bonin had assaulted and released in 1975, also contacted police. On June 11, 1980, plainclothes officers put Bonin under surveillance. They watched him cruise Hollywood, attempting to lure 5 different boys into his van. He succeeded with one, a minor. Officers moved in and arrested Bonin on the spot. In the van, they found ligatures, knives, and other tools of torture. Bonin was charged with 14 murders. In 1982, he was convicted of 10 murders in Los Angeles County and sentenced to death. In 1983, he was convicted of 4 more murders in Orange County and received a second death sentence. During the trial, prosecutors called Bonin the most arch-evil person who ever existed. Bonin showed no remorse. He described how he enjoyed hearing his victims scream, how the torture gave him pleasure, how the killings were like an addiction that required bigger doses to maintain the high. On February 23, 1996, after 14 years on death row, WilliamBonin was executed by lethal injection at San Quentin State Prison. He was 49 years old, 14 confirmed victims, 21 confessed: Marcus Grabbs, Donald Hayden, David Murillo, Charles Miranda, James McCabe, Ronald Gatlin, Harry Todd Turner, Stephen Wood, Darren Kendrick, Stephen Wells, Russell Ruh, Glenn Barker, Dennis Fox, Lawrence Sharp, boys between the ages of 12 and 19, boys whose only mistake was accepting a ride. RandyKraft, the Scorecard Killer. While Bonin was terrorizing Southern California as the Freeway Killer, another man was operating in the same area at the same time: Randy Stephen Kraft. And for years nobody knew. Kraft was intelligent, educated, and methodical. He was a computer programmer. He had a long-term boyfriend. He seemed completely normal. But between 1971 and 1983, Kraft murdered at least 16 young men. He confessed to those 16, but investigators believe the real number is over 60. Kraft kept a coded list of his victims, a scorecard. Police found it in his car. 61 entries, each one a cryptic reference to a murder. Kraft was born March 19, 1945 in Long Beach, California. He attended Claremont Men's College and graduated with honors. He served in the Air Force. After his discharge, he worked as a computer consultant. Kraft was gay and lived openly with his boyfriend Jeff Seelig for over a decade. To neighbors and co-workers, Kraft was quiet, intelligent, successful. Nobody suspected he was a serial killer. Kraft's method was consistent. He frequented bars near military bases: Camp Pendleton, El Toro Marine Base. He targeted young Marines, often hitchhiking or looking for rides. He would offer them a lift. Once in his car, he would drug them with a combination of alcohol and sedatives. Then he would drive them to a remote location. The torture would last hours. Kraft strangled his victims. He mutilated them. He posed their bodies in degrading positions and photographed them. Then he dumped them along highways. Between 1971 and 1983, bodies kept turning up. Young men, mostly Marines, found along freeways in California, Oregon, and Michigan. Police didn't connect the cases. They didn't realize it was one killer. On May 14, 1983, California Highway Patrol pulled over Kraft for erratic driving on Interstate 5. In the passenger seat was 25-year-old Marine Terry Gambrell. He was dead, strangled. In the back of Kraft's car, officers found ligatures, photographs of dead bodies, and a coded list with 61 entries. Each entry corresponded to a victim. Kraft was arrested and charged with 16 murders. During the investigation, police decoded the list. Entries like Airplane Hill, 2 in 1, Marine Carson, Diabco, Angel. Each phrase referred to a specific victim or murder location. The trial began in 1988 and lasted 13 months. It was one of the longest criminal trials in California history. The evidence was overwhelming. Photographs, the scorecard, forensic evidence linking Kraft to multiple victims. On May 12, 1989, Kraft was convicted of 16 murders. He was sentenced to death. RandyKraft is still on death row at San Quentin. He has never shown remorse. He has never fully explained the scorecard. Investigators believe he killed over 60 men. Most of the victims have never been identified. Young Marines, hitchhikers, men who trusted the wrong person. Kraft is one of California's most prolific serial killers, and most people have never heard his name. Charles Ng and Leonard Lake, the Wilseyville murders. 1983 to 1985, Calaveras County, California. 2 men, a remote cabin in the Sierra Nevada foothills, and a killing spree that resulted in at least 11 confirmed murders, possibly 25. Leonard Lake was born October 29, 1945. He was a Vietnam veteran with survivalist fantasies. He believed society was going to collapse. He built a bunker on property in Wilseyville, a tiny community in Calaveras County. In the early 1980s, Lake met Charles Ng, a young man from Hong Kong who had immigrated to California. Ng was a kleptomaniac with a criminal record. The two became friends, and together they created what Lake called Operation Miranda, a plan to kidnap women, hold them as sex slaves in the bunker, and kill anyone who got in their way. On June 2, 1985, Charles Ng was caught shoplifting a vice from a hardware store in San Francisco. When police arrived, Ng fled. His companion, a man using the ID of Robin Stapley, was detained. That man was Leonard Lake. Police ran the ID. Robin Stapley was a missing person. Lake had stolen his identity. At the police station, Lake asked for a glass of water. He pulled out a cyanide capsule he had sewn into his clothing and swallowed it. Within hours, Leonard Lake was dead. Police searched the car Lake had been driving. They found weapons, a silencer, and items belonging to missing people. They traced the car to property in Wilseyville. What they found there shocked even experienced investigators. A concrete bunker, chains bolted to walls, a bed, videotapes. On the tapes, Lake and Ng had recorded themselves torturing women, forcing them to comply with their demands. The women begged for their lives. Lake calmly explained they were now his property. Police dug around the property. They found human remains, bones, burned fragments. At least 11 people were confirmed murdered, possibly 25. The victims included men, women, and children, entire families. Robin Stapley and his friend Charles Gunner, Lonnie Bond, his girlfriend Brenda O'Connor, and their infant son, Lonnie Jr., Paul Cosner, Clifford Parenteau, Jeffrey Gerald, Michael Carroll, Kathleen Allen. 2 children have never been identified. Charles Ng fled to Canada. He was captured in Calgary after shooting a security guard during a shoplifting incident. Ng fought extradition for 6 years. He finally stood trial in 1998. The trial lasted 4 months. Prosecutors presented the videotapes, the physical evidence, testimony from survivors. On February 24, 1999, Ng was convicted of 11 murders. He was sentenced to death. Charles Ng is still on death row at San Quentin. He has filed endless appeals. The case remains one of California's most disturbing. 2 men who built a torture chamber and used it to enslave and murder at least 11 people in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Rodney Alcala, the dating game killer, 1968 to 1979. At least 8 confirmed murders, possibly over 100. Alcala was handsome, charming, intelligent. He had an IQ of 135. He was a photographer, and in 1978, in the middle of his killing spree, he appeared as a contestant on the television show The Dating Game, and he won. The Bachelorette chose him, but after meeting him backstage, she refused to go on the date. She said he gave her creepy vibes. That decision may have saved her life. Rodney Alcala was born August 23, 1943 in San Antonio, Texas. He moved to Los Angeles as a teenager. In 1968, Alcala lured 8-year-old Tali Shapiro into his apartment. A witness saw Alcala drive away with the girl and called police. When officers arrived at Alcala's apartment, they found Tali beaten and sexually assaulted. She was alive but barely. Alcala had fled. He was added to the FBI's most wanted list. Alcala enrolled in film school at NYU under an assumed name. He got a job at a summer camp in New Hampshire. In 1971, 2 children at the camp recognized Alcala from a wanted poster. Police arrested him, but Tali Shapiro's parents had moved to Mexico and refused to return for the trial. Without their testimony, prosecutors couldn't prove attempted murder. Alcala pleaded guilty to child molestation. He served less than 3 years. In 1974, Alcala was paroled. Within months, he was arrested again for kidnapping and assaulting a 13-year-old girl. He served another 2 years. In 1977, he was paroled again, and he began killing. Alcala's method was photography. He approached women and girls, told them he was a professional photographer, and offered to take their pictures. He used this ruse to lure victims to remote locations. Then he would attack, strangle them, revive them, strangle them again. He prolonged the suffering as long as possible. On June 20th, 1979, 12-year-old Robin Samso went to Huntington Beach to meet a friend. A man approached her and asked to take photographs. Robin agreed. She was never seen alive again. Her remains were found 12 days later in the Sierra Madre foothills. Witnesses described the photographer. The sketch matched Rodney Alcala. Police arrested Alcala. In his Seattle storage locker, they found hundreds of photographs. Women, girls, children. Some were identified as missing persons. Most have never been identified. To this day, police don't know how many of the people in those photographs are still alive. Alcala was convicted of Robin Samso's murder in 1980 and sentenced to death, but the conviction was overturned twice on technicalities. He was retried and convicted again in 2010. This time, prosecutors also charged him with 4 additional murders. Jill Barcombe, 18. Georgia Wickstead, 27. Charlotte Lamb, 32. Jill Parenteau, 21. All murdered between 1977 and 1979. DNA evidence linked Alcala to the crimes. In 2010, he was convicted of 5 murders in California. In 2013, he pleaded guilty to 2 additional murders in New York. Cornelia Crilly, 23, murdered in 1971. Ellen Hover, 23, murdered in 1977. Rodney Alcala died in prison on July 24, 2021 at age 77. He was never executed. 8 confirmed murders. But investigators believe the real number is much higher. Police released over 100 photographs found in Alcala's possession. They asked the public to help identify the people in the images. Some have been identified. Many have not. Alcala's true body count may never be known. These 5 killers, WilliamBonin, RandyKraft, Leonard Lake, and Charles Ng near Rodney Alcala, they operated in California between the 1960s and 1980s. Together, they murdered at least 50 people. The real number is probably closer to 200, and yet most people have never heard their names. Why? Because they operated in the shadow of more famous killers. Because their victims were often marginalized. Runaways, hitchhikers, young men from military bases, people society didn't pay attention to. Bonin dumped bodies along freeways for over a year before police connected the cases. Kraft kept a scorecard of 61 victims, and police still don't know who most of them were. Lake and Ng built a torture bunker in the mountains and murdered entire families. Alcala appeared on national television in the middle of his killing spree, and nobody knew. California has produced more serial killers than any other state. The warm weather attracts transients and runaways. The sprawling cities and vast wilderness provide places to hunt and hide bodies. The highway system connects everything, allowing killers to dump victims far from where they were taken. And in the 70s and 80s, before DNA analysis and centralized databases, it was easy for killers to operate across multiple jurisdictions without being caught. Bonin worked with 4 accomplices, young men who helped torture and murder at least 12 victims. One of them, Vernon Butts, died by suicide before trial. The others served time and have been released. Kraft's scorecard has 61 entries. 16 murders confirmed. 45 remain unsolved. Families still don't know what happened to their sons. Lake and Ng videotaped their torture sessions. The tapes are so disturbing they've never been publicly released. Investigators who watched them said they were the worst thing they'd ever seen. Alcala took hundreds of photographs. Some victims have been identified. Many haven't. Police still receive tips about the photographs. Every few years, another victim is identified. Another family gets closure decades late. If these cases showed you the hidden history of California serial killers, make sure to like and subscribe. We cover true crime with factual accuracy and respect for victims. Leave a comment. Had you heard of any of these killers before? Share this with anyone interested in criminal history. These stories matter, not because they're sensational, but because the victims matter. 14 boys killed by Bonin. Over 60 suspected victims of Kraft. 11 confirmed dead at Lake and Ng's cabin. At least 8 murdered by Alcala. These weren't just numbers. They were children, teenagers, young adults, People with families who loved them. People who trusted the wrong person. People who got into the wrong car. California's deadliest serial killers aren't always the ones you've heard of. Sometimes the worst monsters are the ones whose names have been forgotten.